we have discussed the infinite loop concept of, you've got control and improvement, and you should sort of manage that separately. It has an impact on how you set up your performance control system as well. Hello, I'm Tom. Welcome to my channel where we talk about continuous improvement in an industrial setting. And today's video, it is about the management of that continuous improvement. And quite specifically, we have been discussing that continuous loop, right? So that is the infinite loop of controlling and improving your performance. And, sort of added on top is the visioning loop. This concept is pretty important for managing the way you set your targets, the way you improve your targets. This is a good core concept to also keep, let's say, the budgeting of different departments and the total improvement scope and the way that you manage your performance into alignment as a whole site, as a whole company even. So let's very quickly go over it. I've got other videos where I explain this in depth, but the idea is that when you set your targets in the visioning loop, so you check what was last year's performance, what can we do better, what are good KPI targets, things like that. And in the end, what you basically do is you determine what is your current performance standard, right? We've got standards of machine and man and stuff like that. We've also got output standards like an OEE, like a waste percentage, like cost per ton and stuff like that. And we set them with also the note, already sort of a plan. Are we going to just sort of keep them at current performance, or are we going to improve them? So we get to this nice center point, and here we have the choice of, are we going to improve them, or are we happy with the current standard of performance and we're just going to control that? And in that control phase, that control loop, you'll see things like layered process audits, performance control meetings, quick problem solving, so root cause problem solving, but on deviations, stuff like that, right? And then you have this improve loop. In the improve loop, you will see your DMAICs, your Kaizen events, all kinds of things that are specifically meant to increase that performance standard. Now, these loops, they sort of have their own frequency with which they turn. Right? The control loop turns very fast. The improve loop is a bit slower, and the visioning loop is a lot slower. How can you sort of, rule of thumb, guesstimate these frequencies correctly? It is about sort of a natural frequency, less frequent. So if we are talking about daily control, we would then expect roughly weekly improvement and monthly visioning. But when we take, a factory, right? What you will often see is that at a factory, we definitely have your daily control, and then, once a month, we sort of check up on our improvement teams. Are they still doing all the things they need? So maybe you do have weekly meetings. Where was that one? Maybe you do have weekly meetings, but then, for instance, once a month, one of those weekly management meetings sort of becomes your projects meeting in which you do your investment projects and your improvement projects. You just check how are they doing. Those teams will meet way more often, but you check them once a month or so, and then once a year you do a budgeting cycle. So it's like, that does not completely agree with what I just said, right? It's day, month, year. It sort of skips levels there. This is because we are mixing also management responsibilities. So that is a good extra axis to put in here, and then we'll get to, there will still be some exceptions, but then we'll get to a much better framework. See, the thing is, we were talking about a site or plant, and these meetings are always between different levels of management, so to say, right? So if you've got an operator with their team leader, that's also two levels, even though you would say that the operator or a quality specialist is not a manager, but the meetings generally happen between the manager with one sort of layer underneath. So they've got departments. And here is a bit the thing, that's not the full picture, is it? So those departments, they again have lines or teams or however you want to call that. and there is some director on top, like a CEO or a business unit director. So the bigger the company, the more of these layers you will have. But you do see that there is this layered management structure, and each of those layers should actually get their own set of the free loops. So those department managers, if they are managers as well, then they should sort of have some responsibility and autonomy over their own department. Don't you agree? So that means that they should also have sort of this picture. So when we look at, and that means that when we look at sort of the site level, you would expect maybe there is like a daily control, but sort of weekly control is probably good enough. And then we're looking at every month, we're going to check, are those teams that we set up and those projects, are they still doing what they should be doing? And instead of yearly, I would say that you would do a lot better if you would set your new sort of goals on a quarterly basis. Maybe you sort of do like 3 improvement cycles per year, but roughly quarterly is a nice set point for looking at your targets. These are the targets that the site level sets to the departments, but all of the departments underneath. Those yearly goals, they are maybe made up, but they are decided sort of by the site, but they are okayed by the level above that. And so they are okayed by, if you have sort of a one factory organization, the general manager who has the sales and the supply chain and the factory as well, and then they do a yearly budget. And I know that departments also have a yearly budget generally, but you would do a lot better if you would sort of a bit more frequently update those. Maybe not for the bonus targets, because those are yearly bonuses, but at least for what are the actual expected performance levels. Where are we going to put extra improvement resource and stuff like that? So those decisions, not the improvement team itself, but when are we going to start new projects? How many, which resources, stuff like that. So what you then get to when we draw on this information is that you get a number of levels and some frequencies. So when we sort of look at those levels, right? So we've got that line level here at the bottom, that department, site, organization. As I said, if your organization is quite big, there might be an extra one in here. If you have a very large factory with not too many people per se, but more lines, something might be in between here. It depends a little bit, but you get the general gist of this. And then we've got your shift, day, week, month, quarter, year, which are sort of the logical progressions of time. Now, you may say, hey, Tom, there's not the same sort of quantity or same multiplier between them, right? This is 2 or 3 times, this is 5 or 7 times, this is about 4 times, this is about 3 times, this is 4 times. I know. But the thing is, this 4, 3, 4, 3, that actually means that they're pretty close. The only one is that daily to weekly, you will often see, and we will see it here, that one also gets cheated on slightly. Now, when we plot in then, how do we track sort of that line level performance? So the real performance control is generally done at a shift and daily level. And what we then would also want to see, and I'll get back to how to fill this in a bit, but I suggest that on a weekly level, you work actively on getting all the improvements on a line, sort of coordinated, right? And what you may not be doing, but what would be really good to do, is that you do vision what are sort of changing the KPI targets and stuff like that, and setting new things in motion on a monthly level. Now you may say, well, line with their team lead, can we really? Well, I answer autonomous maintenance, or even autonomous management, if you want to really do those as well. But let's sort of fill in this picture, right? At a department level, what we see is that you've got your daily sort of morning meeting, your daily cockpit, whatever you want to call it, and a site tends to have this weekly. An organization, well, maybe you have a small weekly check-in with a couple of the directors, maybe, but the real results meeting, you know that is a monthly meeting, right? So every month you send in the site results and there is a bit of a discussion on it. Are we still hitting the right targets? If we then check where do you sort of plan your improvements, as discussed, when we did the sort of example, when we are looking at those sort of larger improvement teams, then generally we say, maybe twice a month, maybe once a month, we check up on the teams. We just see how they're doing. If you are doing that weekly, it might be good for strong and direct control at the start of a program, but honestly, if you do it weekly, I think you're probably managing, with the site management team, managing at a slightly too low level, because there should be improvement activities at the department level as well. And now you will say, well, improvement teams at the organizational level, I know of that headquarters supply chain reshuffle, but that was more of a supply chain thing instead of a site thing. All of the site improvement teams are done by the site. That is not per se true. There are actually two types of improvement projects that immediately come to mind. The first is the larger capital expenditure, CAPEX projects, investments. Almost always, in a slightly larger organization, a CAPEX project, they are managed by group or central or business unit or whatever, right? So higher than the site level, because you're, as a site, getting special money to build something. The company wants to see that the returns are there. So they are also very interested in making sure. But are they going to check monthly? Well, the project team definitely is. But, really the progress of such type of improvements, generally that is a quarterly thing. The other one is when you really set up like a work stream filled with people who have been freed up. So there's maybe between 4 to even 12 or so FTE, or even more if you have a bigger program, but then it's more work streams, right? Of people that have been freed up on top of the normal labor pool, on top of the normal OAE of a site. Those things are almost always specifically okayed by business unit, segment, corporate, group management, because generally a factory is not allowed to just free up so many people or technically have a lot of people on top of their normal labor pool. So if you do it conscientiously, then that business unit should also keep tabs on are those things really generating their payback, right? So is it progressing and delivering the benefits that we want? That will generally be done on a quarterly level. Those teams, you will know that at the site level, the site is very interested, so they often get into that rhythm as well. So they will report on site monthly or more frequent, even like twice a month, but monthly or twice a month. But the segment director or the business unit director, they'll probably come by at least at the end of each of those waves to check, are we really progressing? And they will also be checking their CAPEX project. Now, as I said, the site gets a yearly budget. That is basically the organization's visioning for that site. And if we fill it in logically, I say go and reset which performance indicators, which performance standards you want to keep and which you want to improve, at least at a quarterly level, or that is at roughly a quarterly level. The small side note, not completely related to this topic, but if you have like improvement teams, a good domain team, it'll take about 3 months or so. So you would think you can do 4 improvement cycles in a year. But in all honesty, second half of July, the whole month of August, most of December and a bit of January, you're not going to do much in the ways of really improving. You already need your resources to just fill the line when there's vacations going on. Nobody really wants to do too many DMAICs in the middle of summer when everybody wants to go on holidays. So if that is the case also in your organization, learn from it, plan 2 improvement cycles before summer and 1 after. Works perfectly. So that's why maybe this should be like 3 times a year. But there are moments when you want to reset that. And at a department level, I am not too used to department managers really setting up in a good way what their targets are. But if you want to steer what happens at a department level, then you should be visioning at a monthly to quarterly level. Now, what do we see in practice? We see that this happens, right? We also see a slight shift, but that is also because visioning at a weekly level is just too much. But if we're looking at, a good weekly site management team meeting, I think you know them. They're generally about what is the performance, how are the departments still working. So if we are, for instance, looking at a good maintenance KPI, how many of the work orders are overdue, that does say something about how the department is working, but it's not really yet like a trend analysis with improvement things. No, this at the site level is performance, right? When you are checking how well people are trained, how that is all working, how well your maintenance team can keep up with work orders, those are the performance indicators, right? The key performance indicators that you want to be tracking at that site level. You don't want to have the OEE breakdown of each individual line. I know plenty of site management teams who do look at it. I immediately advise you, don't, right? That is not what it's about. That is a department and line level control, right? So set that control frequency, but also to control depth, the level, set it correctly. What I see quite often is that there is also a daily operations meeting, something like that, with the site management team, or at least the whole operational set of it. So be very aware of that. It may be useful, but this is not the control meeting, the performance control meeting at the site level. Try not to make it into that. This is a coordination of resources on a very quick scale. So that should be it. Don't copy what is happening here. Don't copy those KPIs. Please, if the director of the site really wants to know what's happening, give him an update, right? That's a bit the thing. Or if the quality manager really needs to know and she cannot be at all of the departments, then send her an email. Or have their quality team be present and just have a quick update maybe later. But this one is a tricky one. Quick updates on priority, on making sure that about 2 to 3 days ahead everything is prepped. Yes, I think generally that is good. But the real performance comes at a weekly level. And the real performance of departments and lines, please keep it at their level. The other thing that we see a lot is, of course, these ones here. So if we have the site setting yearly goals, sure, do that, but also make sure that if you set targets for a site, for instance, you have an OEE target for hopefully a line, not the average for the whole factory, but things like our output target for the whole factory, divvy it up immediately into months. Right? Make a glide path to where you're going to be based on how you visioned which projects are going to run. And sort of allow yourself to have a quarterly update. The site is much better managed if you have a quarterly review of your targets. That doesn't mean you should just make them a bit weaker. If you have your yearly bonus targets, you probably made some agreements that it should be fixed yearly. Even there, if you can, make those agreements that you can sort of rebalance that on a quarterly level. They will get fairer by it. So those are a couple of the tricky ones that you will see. I also from time to time see organizations, but this is the same, right? Doing a control on a weekly level. That generally happens when plants are in trouble, and this organization, this management layer simply sort of takes over that layer. Okay, short term. What I also see, and these are again, it's sort of the same as here, very quick update. Just a plant manager's call with a quick, do we have any, incidents, problems, supply things that the rest needs to know about? No? Okay, done. 15 minutes tops. right? These should be quick and snappy, just to keep everybody aligned, keep it as sort of one management group. That's a good idea, but the real performance is measured monthly, just like the site performance as a site, so the departments do it weekly. That is enough. So think of this system, right? When you now think of your own performance control system and your own improvement meetings, and you see this idea, I hope that this for you sparks some ideas. Maybe this just confirms what you have been doing. Well done. But quite likely you will be saying, our levels, there's a couple of strange things happening there. I may have to rethink it, especially when you see a column like this. That is not a good thing. So these two are sort of logical, because actually what you just do is the one getting the info from here, that is generally one person that is sort of in between here as a sort of a management layer, and they just need to get their info to report it once a day. That's okay. But these two don't focus on performance, focus on priority setting. That's it. And that one, very long term, try to get at least a couple of reviews in there. Know that the organization will give you a yearly budget. You should stick to that. Those targets are important. But for steering your departments, for communicating with all of your colleagues, your employees, think about that more quarterly, rethinking of the strategy. That also means these ones, the visioning ones, they set your improvement resources. Right? So determining how many people or what type of budget will go to a next improvement team or a project, a small project or a big project, that happens in these visioning loops. So you can definitely keep most of the KPI targets at the same level, but rethink where you're going to prioritize your resources, which KPIs can just stay in control, and which we want to make an improvement run and then again keep to that new level. Those are important things to do relatively frequently. Then on that department and line level, when we have good autonomous maintenance or autonomous management, and these are really AM type of organization. That is brilliant if you can organize that. If you do not do AM, sort of skip this level at least of improvement and visioning and keep it at the department level. But if you have an AM team, they should be looking at a weekly base. They should be looking at how are our checklists doing? How are we still generating small machine modifications that will improve? All those small continuous improvement, Kaizen mentality, is that still working? Are we still training effectively? What's the performance on all kinds of trends doing for our line, and what will we do to improve it? And then have like a monthly good sit down with the department manager, maybe even a couple of other support department managers, and just talk about, okay, what is sort of going on at the line? Can we maybe progress this AM team to the next step? Can we support the line and the operators in a better way? That too is visioning, because we are determining which resources are we going to put into the improvement over the next period. So set that up. At a department level, at the very least, you want to have good root cause problem solving. Sort of, that's in between those. But also, like the smaller Kaizen event type of things, they really happen at that level. Give your departments some leeway, some resources, and sort of a push to do improvement projects that are mainly around their own department, staffed mainly with people in their department, and they can just ask for a little bit of extra support from other departments. Not the big guns, not a complete multi-department team. That is a site level thing, but a little bit of support, mainly your own resources. If you organize that so that departments can reach their own improvement goals that you set for them, then you're in a much better and quicker way of improving your performance. So have a good look at that, and then your own organization. If you see that you have all kinds of extras, think about, do you have extra management layers? Are they maybe doubling a lot of work? Maybe. Think about it, have a good critical look at it, and then if that triggers or changes anything for you, let me know in the comments. I like reading about these things. Also, let me know if this triggered a new question or request for a future video. Don't forget to hit that like button, and I will see you the next time when we continue our talks about continuous improvement. In the meantime, don't forget to also enjoy the continuous improvement journey.